Virgil Wray, and I was ship's cook 3rd class. I joined the Navy when I was 17 years old, and just before I turned 18, that's when I joined the Navy, and so it was 1944 when I joined, and served until I was 21. I was regular Navy at that time. And I went to boot camp at the Farragut Naval Training Station in Idaho. And as far as my research goes, I am the only one that served on the Missouri that has ever went through the Farragut Naval Training Station. A lot of the guys didn't even know where it was at, and it had quite a history because it was a secret base. It was built during World War II in the mountains of northern Idaho on Coeur d'Alene Lake, and over 400,000 men took their training there in 4 years. And so it was quite a history. It's now a state park, and they've preserved a lot of it, and so there's been reunions held there, and so it was quite nice to go back and see it, and where you went through boot camp and took your training. And there's still a Navy base in a little town called Bayview, which is about 25 men, I think, they're stationed there, and it is where all the sonar and all that type of stuff is researched and improved and built, because that lake is 1,200 feet deep. And so that's where all that work goes on, and very few people know about it. Then after I finished my boot camp, I went to the Naval Training Station in San Diego and went to Torpedo School, and spent 16 weeks at that. And when we got out of finished our schooling, we had our assignments, and most of the guys that I were with were assigned onto destroyers, and I lost a lot of friends. Out of that torpedo class, there was 10, 12 of us that ran around together, and probably within 3 months after graduating and out to sea, most of them were lost off of Okinawa, and because they was on destroyers, and just a lot of Navy ships were lost during that campaign, and so I lost a lot of good friends. And so I thank the good Lord that my last name began with a W. As torpedoman, and since my name was down at the bottom of the list, they had filled the quota, and I was assigned to the USS Ponaganset, AO-86, which was a tanker, and it was down in the South Pacific at the time, and so I was transported to Ulithi on the USS Munda Bay, which was a baby aircraft carrier that ran back and forth hauling airplanes and sailors to their new ports. And when I got to Ulithi, I laid there over there about a couple of weeks before the tanker arrived in port again. And I went aboard the tanker, and it was assigned as a cook striker, and then went from there and went on up to seaman first, and then ship's cook third. So we really got to see on the tanker. We would just refuel mostly destroyer escorts and destroyers and that type of thing. When we'd go out and take care of them, and then we'd run back to Ulithi. Generally, that was kind of the main port, and reload and then back out again. And so we was constantly on the move, and so it was always kind of nice to sit in the middle of a fleet of ships being protected by all the other ships out around you, because the ammunition boats and tankers and aircraft carriers was all kind of in the middle. And so it was nice to have them guys in them little tin cans out there, being on the front line. And so those are really the heroes of the war, I think. And I served aboard the Ponaganset all during the war and through one campaign. And then, of course, Okinawa was through there. And then when we were laying off of Japan, ready for the invasion, why, we were sent into Wakayama, Japan, which is about 200 miles south of Tokyo, and we were the lead ship in that port, and we were the command ship of the occupation, and it was a city of about 300,000, and it was literally totally destroyed. And we laid over there, and of course there was no problem with the people or anything, so we spent about a month, I think, anchored there. And as they finished up the occupation and whatnot, then from there we went to Hong Kong and laid over for a couple of weeks, and then we got our orders to hit for the States, and our captain cranked that old ship up, and we ran her at flank speed all the way to San Francisco. Never fell apart. But we arrived in San Francisco, and then I got leave. And so I'd been at sea for almost 2 years, and had literally no contact with the family. A letter now and then, maybe 8-9 months afterwards, and got to San Francisco, and I got 30 days leave, and I went home, and then came back and went aboard the ship, and then we had orders to go to the Brooklyn Navy Yard for decommissioning, and so then we went around through the Panama Canal and up to Brooklyn, decommissioned our ship. On the tanker, it had quite a history. I floated around on that thing for 2 years. We brought it back in and decommissioned, as I said. And tankers were in high demand at the end of the war, so it was automatically sold right away to private interests. And they moved it over to Bayonne, New Jersey, and they started loading it down with fuel oil or whatever, and the thing broke in two, and stamped in two, and they could, naval architects and engineers and what that examined it, and they found out that was the first indication that it was metal fatigue was prevalent in ships. And so they were able, I think they added another section to the ship, and they put her back together, welded her together, and then they put the word out that all Liberty-style ships, Victory-style ships, or any ships that in that period built during the war, they had to put belly bands around them of steel plates about 3/4 of an inch thick by about 18 inches wide across the decks, and wrapped around the hull of the ship so that they wouldn't fall apart on them. And so there were thousands of those type of ships that were still in service. And the Ponaganset was the first one to fall apart and metal fatigue, and then that's when they changed a lot of the design on naval architecture. And so I thought, oh, that's kind of makes you sit back and think, because we had been in, we were in that typhoon off of Okinawa in 45, and we're bouncing out there, and we we had rolled her over to 32 degrees, and 35 was the point of no return. So it makes you kind of sit down and think, you know, what could have happened. Yeah. And I was assigned to the USS Missouri at that time.